Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Rich Tolosano. I'm a former school administrator, teacher trainer, and AP Statistics teacher. I'm happy to be working with you today. Before we begin, let's first review a few technical aspects of the presentation. If you're having any audio trouble, please check the audio setting on your computer, as well as your speaker volume settings. If you're still having issues, please see the detailed audio troubleshooting file available in the resource list beneath the Q&A window. For all listeners, there are some icons located at the bottom of the webinar console that open additional feature panels. You can read about today's speakers in the speaker bio panel and access the resource list to download a copy of today's slides. To submit a question for our speakers to answer during the Q&A session, please type them in the Q&A box located above the resource list window. Our team will be responding to those questions throughout the webinar. And if we don't happen to get to your question today, we'll be sure to reach out to you individually with that answer. Finally, an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online in the next 24 hours. We're confident you'll want to listen again and share with your colleagues. So you can find that archive on edweek.org. Now let's get into our main order of business. As the Director of Partner Success at the Graide Network, I'm thrilled to be moderating a remarkable success story today about Clayton County Public Schools, the fifth largest district in Georgia, serving over 55,000 students. They deployed an innovative partnership with the National Math and Science Initiative and the Graide Network last school year to design and implement a highly successful formative assessment framework and achieved record-breaking test scores. The premise of our conversation today is that formative assessment is a powerful tool, helping all stakeholders better understand, track, and fuel student preparedness, performance, and growth. To be most effective, formative assessment must be ongoing, consistent, and designed in conjunction with very thoughtful and complete feedback and data cycles. This is no small task. It requires upfront planning, coordination, and key teacher and student supports, all of which we're very excited to dive into today. So the goal of this webinar is to unpack key lessons from Clayton County Public Schools to help you and your districts leverage the power of feedback and data to achieve greater success for students and teachers. We hope that you'll participate, share, and leave with resources that you and your team can use immediately. By the end of today's webinar, you'll leave with the following key takeaways: how to create a culture of achievement and rigor in your school or district, the impact and role of feedback and formative assessment, understanding the different types of assessment, and actionable tips and best practices on how to implement formative assessment. Our esteemed presenters today have many insights to share about the district strategy and classroom implementation that make formative assessment work to support rigorous instruction and high expectations for students. I'm pleased to introduce the folks who are joining me today. Dr. Ebony Lee is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment at Clayton County Public Schools. In the past 20 years, she has served in various instructional roles. She has presented nationally and internationally and has been recognized as Teacher of the Year and Support Leader of the Year. Christy Heath, the District Coordinator for Advanced Learning, Gifted, and Intervention at Clayton County Public Schools. For over 30 years, she's served in various instructional roles and has also been recognized as Teacher of the Year and Support Leader of the Year. And Mr. Greg Naranjo from the National Math and Science Initiative, more commonly known as NMSI. Greg is the Special Projects Manager overseeing the design and implementation of the comprehensive NMSI program for Clayton County, featuring the innovative approach to formative assessment that we're talking about today. I'll first hand it over to Dr. Lee to share the story about the formation of Clayton County's vision for student success and how they got started on this ambitious program 2 years ago.
Thanks, Rich. We're excited to be here today, and I hope by sharing our insights and reflections from our work as a district leadership team over the past few years and describing how we decided to fundamentally redefine expectations, increase rigor, and rethink teacher and student supports that we can help inform the strategies of other district and school leaders as they continue a pursuit for higher performance. As district leaders, it was extremely important for us to take a step back and examine what opportunities were being provided to all students in our school district. We did just that in 2017 when our new superintendent, Dr. Morsees Beasley, came on board. Dr. Beasley charged all of us to commit to preparing all students for a rapidly changing world in order to improve their lives by more effectively preparing them for college and careers. He challenged us to take a hard look, and when we did, it was truly eye-opening. We discovered that we had a smaller population of students who were receiving acceleration and advanced learning opportunities, and they were on a pathway for college and career readiness. But for others, we were spending a considerable amount of time and resources on remediation. Thus, our actions did not support our aspiration. So we decided we needed to align the two by accelerating learning for all and building in the necessary supports along the way. We thought a lot about the population we're serving. Our district has one of the highest transiency rates in the state of Georgia. 32% of students will move in and out of our school district or among our schools. 22% of students are multilingual, and over 80% qualify for free and reduced lunch. And while our high school graduation rate has improved dramatically by over 18 points since 2015, something we're really proud of, we still find that less than 40% of our high school graduates enroll in four-year colleges. And of those enrollees, 70% of them require remediation. So our leadership team dove in to understand the opportunity. Coming out of those briefings, we decided that we were going to fundamentally flip our response to accelerate advanced coursework for most of our students, shifting the goal from remediation to rigor, and setting a culture of high expectations for every student and every stakeholder. And we knew that in order to have a successful and supportive start, we would have to secure partners in this work. And NIMSY and the Graide Network have been vital partners.
Thanks, Dr. Lee. It's a really impressive commitment by Clayton County to focus on that accelerated learning and those college and career goals rather than the remedial work. I imagine that this required a lot of work up front to ensure that everybody was on the same page about those high expectations. Christy, I'd love if you could share a little bit about your mindset at the beginning of this and how you went about forming the specific initiatives to make this strategy a success.
Thanks, Rich. A common question people have with this strategy, and one we asked ourselves, is what if our students are not ready? What if they don't do well? And we kind of thought, well, they're not doing their best now, so let's try it. Our view was that our students could gain so much more if they were being challenged. So we made a conscientious effort to provide every student with exposure to rigorous coursework that will equip them with the necessary skills to achieve academic success and compete in a global society. We named our initiative Advanced Learning for All and went to work. The ALA expectation has increased the number of advanced course offerings in schools to eliminate barriers and increase access to all students. And in 2 years in, the initial results show that our bold bet on students is paying off. More students are signing up for and completing advanced learning coursework. We've seen increases in student Lexile measurement and growth on Achieve 3000 with grades 9 through 12 and Georgia Milestones grades 3 through 12, as well as improved SAT scores. Most notably, thanks to our partnership with NIMSY and Graide, we achieved record AP exam qualifying scores. We're also seeing improvement in other important indicators as well. Student attendance rates in schools have improved in the past 2 years, and rates of discipline have declined by 18% in 2 years. We have also surveyed teachers and students to understand the impact on their mindset and their perceptions of the support being provided for this initiative. We are pleased to see that 68% of our students felt supported in their classes, and 84% stated that they would take an advanced placement or accelerated course next year. But as they say, nothing worth doing is ever easy. And that's true of our journey as well. In my role as the district coordinator for advanced learning, gifted, and intervention, I found myself personally challenged to answer this call, but now thinking much bigger. We wanted advanced learning for all students. The task of challenging students' mindsets is one we should all take into account. It's certainly not easy to change the mindset of children, and it's even harder to change the minds and habits of adults. So we were very deliberate in the steps we took to make this advanced learning for all goal a success. So we wanted to make advanced learning a district priority. We knew we needed a focused strategy and a lot of support in order to meet our goal. We laid out 3 key initiatives. We formed a clear vision that was communicated often and consistently to all audiences. We added professional development for teachers and supports for students. And we provided key resources to help our teachers be successful with formative assessment in the classroom. I'd like to share our thought process as we decided to prioritize and focus on these 3 specific things. Communication. All right, communication was first. So clear communication across all stakeholders of our high expectations for every student is foundational. This was our biggest thing. We wanted a concentrated effort so everyone knew why we were doing this. Instead of just starting an initiative in one school and working out from there, the message started with our superintendent and was shared with the entire community. We were ready to act boldly and confidently, and we adopted the motto, we are committed to high performance, and we told every stakeholder this as often as we could. Next, we looked at professional development. We knew going into this initiative we needed to better understand the types of professional development our AP teachers needed in order to be successful. Not only did we want teachers getting PD, but we wanted summer and extended enrichment for students to increase their readiness skills. Students also needed resources and dedicated time for coaching and support. Lastly, better formative assessment. We knew we wanted to arm teachers with better data about student learning and directly benefit students through timely feedback on formative assessment. These cycles of practice and feedback are critical to student learning and growth, and we wanted to foster and prioritize this without overwhelming our teachers. It was against this backdrop that the National Math and Science Initiative approached our district with grant opportunities to support our advanced placement English and STEM courses. It aligned perfectly with our need to support teachers and students to accomplish our ambitious goal of advanced learning for all students.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's great to hear not only about your strategic plan, but the vision behind it. I'm sure a lot of folks are eager to hear exactly the details of the National Math and Science Initiative. So I'll hand it over to Greg to walk us through exactly what that programming entails.
Thank you, Rich. I'm thrilled to be here on behalf of the National Math and Science Initiative. We at NMSI are a national nonprofit that works to facilitate the scale-up of programs that have a demonstrated impact on STEM education in the U.S. Our mission is to advance STEM education to ensure all students, especially those furthest from opportunity, thrive and reach their highest potential as problem solvers and lifelong learners who pursue their passions and tackle the world's toughest challenges. Furthermore, as an organization, we believe STEM education is the greatest lever to accessing the opportunities and is unmatched in unlocking student potential. Our signature program, the College Readiness Program, is what has been implemented in Clayton County and aims specifically to broaden access and achievement in rigorous AP STEM, English, and even fine arts coursework. Our core CRP program, available to all of our district partners, consists of both teacher and student supports. Teachers receive year-round professional development. This consists of a 4-day CRP Summer Institute training, a fall 2-day training, as well as a spring 1-day. These are course-specific trainings that include pedagogically sound instructional activities with hands-on experience, best practices for assessment strategies and student supports, data-to-action planning guidance, as well as STEM advocacy and teacher leadership development. Teachers are also given access to our online curricular supports where they can find resources for each major unit of instruction, including suggested pacing guides, assessments with grading rubrics, and even model lessons. Students receive AP exam practice in the form of Saturday study sessions. These are currently provided to students at their own school in a face-to-face setting on 3 separate occasions throughout the year, although we are in the process of transitioning to a new online model that includes virtual sessions delivered on a more frequent basis throughout the year and includes online asynchronous study modules for students to access at any time. But finally, there are many instances where grant funding provided by NIMSY allows districts to offer monetary rewards to site directors, site coordinators, teachers, and even students based on school and student performance. So for instance, if schools increase the number of qualifying scores received on the AP exams, they would receive a monetary incentive for that. For a bit more on grant-funded schools and these incentives, broadly speaking, as grant funds become available, we use a set of qualitative and quantitative tools that help us engage with districts, schools, and charter systems to determine how we could impact their networks. And should it be determined that a significant positive impact can be made, we provide CRP program funding and continue to work with these school networks to set up long-term successful partnerships. We do support some networks in a fee-for-service model as well, in which case incentives such as these mentioned would be up to the network's own funding situations. Now, that was an overview of our standard NIMSY CRP supports. We are always interested, though, in collaborating with districts to provide them with the supports that they want and need. This is the case in Clayton County, where we decided to pilot a new model based on the unique district needs Christy has identified here today. We designed a program that includes our standard CRP supports, but also focuses more heavily on consistent, ongoing instructional coaching and formative assessment powered by the Graide network to create collaborative data cycles that benefit teaching and learning. Listed here are the additional components included in this pilot model. First, each teacher has been matched with a NIMSY instructional coach. Our coaches are expert AP teachers who provide direct one-on-one coaching support using a platform and regular frequency agreed upon by the coach and teacher collectively, and also lead the face-to-face Saturday study sessions offered at their teachers' schools. We also established online teacher cohorts, also known as professional learning communities, for our Clayton County partners, led by these same instructional coaches. These teacher cohorts have been allowed to set their own schedule and agenda for meetings, although we ask them to meet at least monthly. Meetings are driven by participant need and geared towards an underlying theme that the cohorts want to explore with guidance from our instructional coaches, of course. Some topics discussed in the past include previewing upcoming units of instruction, planning common activities such as the assessment pathway assignments, reviewing the Graide network feedback reports to identify trends in data and action planning, examining College Board resources, and even practicing with new analytical rubrics like those in the AP ELA courses, for instance. Lastly, we've worked with the Graide network to provide a unique set of formative assessment supports for our Clayton County teachers. This set includes a teacher assessment pathway for each available AP course. And these are sets of formative assessment assignments. Support from the Graide network was also provided in the form of assignment scoring and feedback report sharing. And teachers were also provided with a customized NIMSY landing page on the Graide network's website. I point this out because it allowed for easy access to assessment pathway assignments, the Graide network submission process, and additional support resources. And I think ease of access is highly important in the data cycle.
Thanks, Greg, so much for the broad overview of the NIMSY supports. There's so many great components within that. I'd love to do a deep dive into the formative assessments. Could you help break down for us exactly how those were designed and the way that you hoped that they would function in the classroom?
Yeah, sure. We based our assessment pathways on the idea that increased opportunities for students to respond to highly rigorous open-ended questioning in an environment similar to what they would see on the AP exam itself is going to lead to higher levels of content retention, skills development, and ultimately levels of success on the exam. We also went in with the belief that formative assessment is an excellent avenue for exposing students to such questioning and is critical to achieving these sought-after student outcomes. We further recognize that formative assessment can be especially hard to design, and two, to provide direct feedback on, at least in a timely manner, with the workloads, responsibilities, and sometimes lack of experience our AP teachers possess. Thus, we've looked to design our assessment pathways to meet these challenges. Our assessment pathways are our series of 7 free response question assignments that align with the learning objectives for major units of instruction in that course. The questions themselves are selected from previously released AP exams, so the questions are guaranteed to be rigorous and aligned with what students will see on the exam in May. Assessment pathway assignment topics align with the College Board's suggested pacing of the curriculum and are meant to be delivered once a month through the school year. This is the October through April months. If teachers are following that pace, they would be on track to assess information or skills that students are currently working on or have recently covered. When using these assignments, our teachers are encouraged to scaffold the experience for students in an effort to build the stamina and response development speeds necessary for the AP exam. Some provided suggestions for scaffolding include, for instance, adjusting the length of an assignment. Teachers may begin with just one FRQ question as an assessment assignment and eventually build their way up to 3 FRQs. Or possibly, teachers may adjust the assignment time constraints. Teachers may start the year with time constraints and without time constraints and gradually impose more strict time limits so students understand the eventual conditions of the exam. I can even see teachers providing FRQ prompt and response guidance early on. This may include unpacking the question itself as a class before beginning the assignment, or possibly providing guiding questions to students to understand how to unpack the AP question and develop responses themselves. Now, big picture, these assessment pathways are meant to function as long cycle formative assessments. This way, they give teachers both timely and substantive data to understand where students are, identify gaps in learning, and create their action plan in time to impact instruction. Here's how they worked in Clayton County. Each month, teachers give their students an assessment pathway assignment. This is up to 3 free response questions. And then in turn, upload their student work to the Graide Network's online platform. Within days, teachers receive back a detailed class summary report, and each student receives a personalized feedback report from the grader who specialized in that content area. Now, the teacher report provides a quick, detailed snapshot into class-wide performance and includes each grader's thoughts and feedback. The data on this report includes holistic trends and insight, top and bottom performers, and granular performance data by rubric component and FRQ type even. These reports can be used to identify student performance trends in the qualitative and quantitative data, ideally with their instructional support staff. They can also be used to drive go-forward instruction and action planning, and are a great tool for small group exercises where teachers can group students based on target need, or for class-wide discussions using select student work as exemplars. And as mentioned, each student also receives their own individual student report. And the reports are specific for every student, and they include feedback on the areas of strength and areas for growth, as well as comments for each part of the FRQ. These student reports can be printed and passed back, or passed back digitally via Google Classroom or even email. Students can then write on them, take notes, set goals, and use it to guide their studying. These are really great tools for student reflection, goal setting, and revision, as well as student and teacher conferencing. You can have some really great conversations with these reports. In schools, these reports are being used to put up on data walls to talk about what skills the class is developing, used in one-on-one student-teacher conferences as mentioned, and ultimately to increase student success throughout the school year. Now, our instructional coaches play an important role in the data cycle as well. They look at the data alongside our teachers and based on trends support them in creating informed action plans with targeted extensions and interventions for the students. Our instructional coaches are there to help make sure teachers are considering multiple sources of data as well. and not just relying on one form of formative assessment. Some examples of additional sources of data might come from the class time with the students, student study session observations as they lead those, or possibly shared data from online cohort discussions with colleagues.
Thanks, Greg. That was a great overview and deep dive into the assessment literacy considerations and the design that went into the Clayton County supports. I think we all know that formative assessment is this really powerful tool for student learning and measurement for stakeholders. Ever since Paul Black and Dylan William brought formative assessment to the forefront of teaching and learning strategy in the 90s, our understanding and application of formative assessment has grown and expanded rapidly. One of our chief focuses at the Graide Network is to partner with districts like Clayton County and partners like NIMSY to really think about what formative assessment should look like in classrooms across K-12 districts today, so that we can best prepare our students for success in the rapidly evolving landscape of the 21st century. Now more than ever, writing is a foundational skill. It's not just tested on advanced placement and end-of-course exams. We're talking about college essays, almost every college level course, job applications, and certainly on-the-job requirements. We want students to be writing confidently and thinking critically in all of their courses. In Clayton County, we helped facilitate a return to the very basic principles of learning, practice and feedback. Learning how to write is just like learning any other skill. The more opportunities a student gets to write and the more feedback they receive on their writing, the more they'll advance in this skill. The Graide Network began as research into the obstacles to teaching and learning as experienced directly in the classroom. Over and over, teachers described how frustrating it was to feel like they're juggling a million balls, and they simply weren't able to give their students specific feedback as often as they would have liked. This is why we exist. All the research shows feedback is too important not to be done well. John Hattie's research shows feedback consistently ranks as one of the most powerful drivers of student achievement. In fact, it's twice as impactful as the average teaching practice. And when it's done well, effective feedback can result in 2 years of growth in one school year. Importantly, researchers have found that academic feedback is more strongly and consistently related to achievement than any other teaching behavior. This positive relationship between feedback and student performance has proven consistent regardless of grade, race, socioeconomic status, or school setting. The problem is simply one of time. The typical high school teacher has 120 students. Spending just 10 minutes to read and give feedback on student writing becomes a 20-hour job for nights and weekends. It's simply impossible to read and respond to students in any sort of fast, consistent, and ongoing basis. The research also shows that failure to implement effective feedback practices in your school will undermine every other effort in instruction, curriculum, and assessment. As Rick Mormelli points out, if there is no feedback, it turns out the assessment, the task, the assignments don't have much instructional value compared to when there is feedback. This breakdown in the feedback loop is costly. When feedback doesn't happen well, the whole cycle breaks down for both students and teachers, removing the value of doing assessment in the first place. So we want formative assessment and we want it to be done well. But it's hard to imagine asking teachers to work more. The headline of this year's poll of attitudes toward the public school is, "Broad discontent leads half of teachers to consider quitting their jobs." Almost all comments cited from teachers hit on the sheer hours requirement. One teacher summed it up perfectly. The demands placed on public school teachers are quite literally impossible to reasonably accomplish. If we want teachers to buy into formative assessment and collaborate on data cycles, we must support them. As you can see, this is a big problem that we're working to solve. We do that by offering online grading services to schools and districts so that teachers are no longer bearing the burden alone of grading and providing high-quality feedback to the over 100 students they see every day. We aren't delivering AI feedback. This is light years beyond computer-generated feedback or spell check. Our graders are graduate and undergraduate students from leading colleges and universities across the country. Our job is to recruit, vet, and develop those graders into highly skilled feedback pros. They provide feedback that is actionable, personalized, student-friendly, and highly effective. And we're tackling big rocks like thesis, organization, development of ideas, analysis, and use of evidence, to name a few, not just grammar and spelling. An interesting note about our graders is that over half of them are pre-service teachers. Imagine if your new teachers came into your district with this kind of experience and development. It's a pretty powerful idea. And we're really proud of how Clayton County Public Schools has leveraged the Graide Network to create a culture of achievement in their AP courses. As Christy spoke to earlier, the initial results are really positive. The percentage of Clayton County Public School students passing AP exams in 2019 increased to a record 18% for courses participating in the Graide Network, an improvement of 38% from the average pass rate over the previous 4 years. These students outperformed the comparison group, students at schools that did not complete the recommended assignments by course, by 11 percentage points. The number of Clayton County Public School students scoring 3 or lower on AP English free response questions decreased by 50%, while students scoring a 5 or higher increased 16 percentage points, a major shift from failing toward passing the exam. And it's important to note that these AP English free response questions are from the College Board's previous 9-point holistic rubric, which correspond typically to a score of 3 or higher on the AP exam if a student is reaching that benchmark of a 5. And so these scores are what make students eligible for college credit, one of Clayton County's key metrics that they're tracking. Student engagement also saw gains. 86% of students reported an increase in engagement and motivation as a result of personalized feedback. And we're really happy with the scale of our impact as well. In total, students have received over 48,000 pieces of individualized feedback on their practice AP free response questions. And 79% of students reported more meaningful conversation with their teacher using their feedback reports. With Graide Network support, teachers reallocated over 1,300 hours of grading and feedback time into data analysis, lesson planning, and professional development. We saw some pretty incredible things happening last school year at high schools across Clayton County that contributed to these outsized results. Teachers were leveraging the Graide Network to assign more practice free response questions for students. This extra practice, along with fast feedback and detailed data for both teachers and students, helped to build student confidence and preparedness for the exam, and allowed teachers to shift their time from grading to lesson planning, student conferencing, professional learning communities, and their personal professional learning. Finally, academic data from the assignments that were graded was carefully monitored throughout the school year to evaluate trends in student performance on their AP free response questions. This was done at all levels of stakeholders, from the district office, individual school leaders, curriculum coordinators, teachers, and of course, the students themselves. As a facilitator of many of these meetings, I really noticed the way that all the stakeholders jumped in, hands in, to really discuss and evaluate student performance from the data. Ultimately, writing benchmarks can be either interim or formative assessments. It all depends on the way they're designed and how the results are used. In fact, when designed properly, they can be considered both formative and interim. Interim assessments are sometimes known as long cycle formative assessments. Whether it's a writing assessment is properly designated as interim or formative is determined primarily by its use and who is using the results, as well as how often and under what conditions it's administered, when the results are available, and what decisions can be made from that data. In our resource list, you can download the full chart that breaks down the differences between all these assessment types. Whether formative, interim, or summative, each type plays an important role in a comprehensive assessment system. While there are many levels of stakeholders to consider, all experts agree that all assessments should serve to improve student learning and to document that learning for a variety of stakeholders. I'd love to open it up a little bit to the audience. We know that there are challenges associated with implementing a formative assessment process. And we heard about some of these challenges that were lurking behind the scenes for Clayton County from Dr. Lee and from Christy in the way that they went about setting their strategic plan. On your screen, you'll notice a question for you. We'd love to hear from you. What have been your biggest challenges to date with formative assessment? And using this information, we'll kind of guide some of the conversation that we'll have ongoing throughout the rest of today's webinar. Has it been the operational planning? Has it been getting data back to teachers and stakeholders in a quick way? Gaining buy-in from each stakeholder? Time? Or perhaps the lack of direct value for students? So take a moment on your screen to indicate what your biggest challenge has been in your district around formative assessment. So we'll give you just a few more moments to identify your challenge, and let's take a look at the results. So we see quite a variety, actually. We do see that teacher buy-in and time constraints have been kind of our top two neck and neck, but we're seeing that these challenges can go across the board for every stakeholder, and we want to make sure that we provide you with some actionable steps around how you can work to get beyond those challenges. And if you're attending this webinar, you're already well aware of the benefits of formative assessment. There's a lot of reasons to do it, and everybody can win. Students get timely feedback to direct their learning progress. Teachers are equipped to be way more effective coordinating with their peers, delivering lessons and working with students. And administrators gain a clear understanding of where everyone is and how they can help. Our final section today is on implementation and best practices. We want to make sure you all leave with specific next steps to take away and start doing immediately to support advanced learning initiatives. I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Lee and Christy to talk about how Clayton County has structured formative assessment and some of their best practices that led to successful implementation.
Thanks, Rich. When it comes to formative assessment, school systems are always trying to find the right way to ensure the assessments inform our practices. We know that formative assessment is critical to the teaching and learning cycle as it supports alignment among what is taught, what is learned, and what is assessed. We've spent a lot of time on this. Currently, our comprehensive assessment system includes a balance of benchmark assessments in core subjects after each unit of study as our long cycle formative assessment, shorter pieces within lessons for medium cycle formative assessment, and various traditional methods and leveraging some technology tools for short cycle assessment within a given lesson. So at this time, I would like for Christy to just share some of our high impact practices that we prioritize as a district because they've proven to yield great results when implemented well.
Thanks, Dr. Lee. As a district, there are three main high impact practices we have trained on. So our first one is what we look at is close reading followed by evidence-based writing performance task. This is exactly what AP questions demand of students or any student in a classroom. We want to help students practice and develop this skill, not just how to do well on the multiple choice questions. These questions are built into our medium cycle and long cycle formative assessments. Second, we look at academic discussion training for teachers to engage students, how they are thinking, how they are driving the conversation. But we also want to build confidence in our students to increase their academic discourse. We want our classrooms to come alive with academic discussion. Third, the third key practice is higher order questioning. These are probing questions posed by the teacher as well as by the student. This strategy works to indicate to the teacher if students are truly mastering concepts. These latter two strategies are very much used for short cycle, in class, and formative assessment. They add immediate value to teachers and students to know what was learned and if or where any gaps are and respond in the moment. One resource that has made a tremendous difference in our teachers' ability to challenge students is the Graide network. For 7 rounds of practice free response questions, our teachers had a way to get quick formative data, both qualitative and quantitative, which gave them insights into what students knew and where the gaps were. Not only was this data helpful to inform teachers, each student received their own report with narrative-style feedback on areas of strength and growth. When I had talked with our AP teachers, they were so excited to be able to have an idea of what they needed to go back to focus on. They had different ways of utilizing formative data. They could post class summary data so that the class could talk about the skills broadly, or they were using the individual feedback reports for one-on-one student conferencing. The Graide network helped many teachers drive their instruction. Instead of spending all their time scrambling to grade and comment, they could focus their energy on analyzing the results, making the diagnosis, and go forward with instructional plans. Obviously, there is a direct value of getting that data and feedback in the hands of students and teachers. Being able to support an effective assessment cycle for free response questions helps us get a higher order thinking and advanced learning that we're going for. There are 2 tactical considerations about assessment that must be in place to be well functioning: scheduling and teacher buy-in. The Graide network allows us to put some firepower behind both. One major tactical question districts must answer is, how do you align your PD calendar with your formative assessment calendar? If you're collecting data, you must carve out time for formal quarterly PD or department meetings to look at that data and determine instructional changes. So this is our data and analysis protocol. First, our schools are divided into 4 clusters, each with an area assistant superintendent. This area assistant superintendent has structured their PLCs around each school's comprehensive school improvement plan that aligns to the overall district plan. First, the assistant superintendents model data analysis and action planning with the principals. Then, the principals engage teachers in the same process. From there, our area assistant superintendents circle back to provide support in this by visiting the schools, observing, and giving feedback on how well the process is going. To make sure we know what's working and where help is needed, we schedule regular meetings with school and district leadership teams and coaches. In these meetings, they evaluate if assessment data is providing us with the right information to move forward. We look forward for understanding at classroom level. How is the teacher using the data? What did they learn about their students? And what are they doing about it? The district's role is to support principals, to have that time and ensure the right department level meetings are available to teachers. This sends a really important message to teachers and students. Every action we take being aligned with the vision we have. The second major question is, how do we make sure we get teachers to buy in, particularly when it comes to those medium or longer cycle formative assessments, like benchmarks? Teachers often perceive these as having little direct impact on their classrooms. Investing in Graide network reports that include narrative-style feedback written directly to their students helps flip that switch. In my view, the biggest part of assessment is teacher buy-in, so it's effective in the classroom. Teachers need to know that assessments are not about compliance, but are a critical part of the teaching and learning process. In our experience, we have seen teacher enthusiasm really take root where leaders ingrain data analysis in the school culture. It's evident when you see things like personal data notebooks, students charting their journey, setting goals, and talking about how close they are to meeting goals with their teachers. Now I'll hand it over to Greg to share what he and the NIMSY team have observed about best practices for implementing formative assessment and collaborative data cycles.
Thank you, Christy. The first year with our instructional coaches and assessment pathways in Clayton County was a valuable experience. We learned how instructional coaches can best leverage their online cohort time to improve student instruction, and also how to best utilize our assessment pathways in Graide Network's performance reports to drive decision-making going forward. We also uncovered some common best practices for formative assessment and collaborative data cycles from both our experiences working with the 10 high schools in Clayton County, as well as hundreds more in other regions. First, you have to promote collaboration on a consistent basis. Our online model, we ask cohorts to meet at least once a month, mainly because we're asking these teachers to collaborate outside of instructional time. But if your school system has instructional support staff on campus, or if your collaborative groups consist solely of teachers, I could see these cohorts meeting bi-weekly, even weekly during common planning periods. Frequent touch points generate a community of learning and support and allow for relationship building amongst cohort members. The stronger the relationships, the more willing the group will be to work together in supporting their students. Another best practice is to provide teachers with ownership of their learning. Allow them to drive the topics of conversation when working together or with support staff. This is something we've worked to emphasize in year 2 of our work in Clayton County. We are looking to empower our teachers to decide what their focus of learning should look like, both short-term from month to month and long-term over the course of the year. Teachers tend to work harder when they're vested in the learning plan. Lastly, teachers and coaches must use the data to drive their discussions and action planning. Day to day, month to month, as data comes in, learning opportunities arise. Teachers must take advantage of these opportunities to learn from the data and deepen their understanding of their students' strengths and challenges. This, in turn, leads to a set of informed decisions that support students where they need it most. Instructional coaches should take on the responsibility of facilitating these discussions and anticipating where student shortcomings may be. These actions create a collaborative effort that uses data to improve instruction and support students' unique needs. I'd also be remiss if I didn't recognize Clayton County as an excellent partner and key contributor to our learning and successes over the past year. Our team has recognized them as exhibiting several of these best practices, taking our suggestions to heart and into practice, and allowing us to learn from their work. Their door is always open to our program team. Their teams are willing to pilot new initiatives and have always been helpful in sharing their data. I'll also add that what has really made our partnership with Clayton County so successful is that our programming was directly aligned with their district priorities and needs. They had been looking to better support their AP teachers and were also looking to grow their AP program. We were looking to improve our supports in both of these areas and found a willing partner and collaborator in Clayton County. I think that this is what ultimately makes our work with districts successful. We at NIMSY look for that kind of alignment to district priorities, administrative buy-in, and levels of collaboration as part of our application and onboarding processes. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Lee to share a summary of her takeaways.
Thank you again. So first, it all starts with how clear and aligned is your vision. We looked at the data and asked ourselves, what is the profile of a high school graduate that we're wanting? We realized that we wanted greater access, and so we committed to higher performance. Some questions to reflect on include, how present and alive is your vision? Can an individual classroom teacher or parent repeat the model or see its core tenets? From there, your strategic plan needs to be very focused. We went from having several performance objectives to only 4 that directly align to our strategic goals. Focus allows you to channel energy and resources. Therefore, for each initiative, you can fully support it and think about the specific supports that will be required for each stakeholder, such as the students, your teachers, your parents. We worked on strengthening our partnership with NIMSY, College Board, the Graide Network, specialized support staff at our district and other stakeholders, all to reinforce our core focus areas. And finally, assessment practices. that produce instructional and measurement value for all stakeholders is critical. Hopefully this webinar has been helpful in sharing some best practices for formative assessment. You need the data to know where you are so that you can positively impact teaching and learning to help you get to where you aspire to be. So looking ahead, my goal is that we continue to provide our teachers with this incredible support. As we grow our program and this becomes more normalized, and yes, we certainly plan to normalize high performance in Clayton County, we have our eye to expand these additional course areas to younger grade levels to build a stronger foundation. As we see double-digit gains for students making qualifying AP scores, we hope this evidence electrifies our county. Our goal is for every student to be successful, to walk out our doors and go into college and career and feel confident that they have the tools to tackle it. We're extremely proud of and thankful for our partnership with NIMSY and the Graide Network, and we're thankful for this opportunity to share our journey.
It's been great to dive into the work that Clayton County has been doing. They have an evidence-based approach, leveraging best practices in communication of a vision and their professional development for teachers. I want to walk through the assessment planning timeline and the potential assessment delivery timeline to equip you with some actionable next steps. So as you're thinking about implementing this for next school year, what you might want to consider is the timeline we have here on the screen. These resources are also available for download for you under the Resources tab. So in the next month, you might want to kick things off by identifying and selecting committee members to evaluate the current state of assessment practices in your district. From there, once you've done that assessment, determine what your focus areas are going to be moving forward. And it may not be advanced placement courses. It may be certain grade levels you're serving, certain content areas based on your state and district needs, and any end-of-course assessment that you might be responsible for. From there, you can then dig into the assessment materials themselves. If they're writing benchmarks, what are going to be the prompts, rubrics, and norming materials that will be used to determine qualifying scores? And then later at the end of this school year, as you're wrapping up this school year and really driving into planning for next year, begin to outline your plans for how you're going to collect data and designing your assessment and PD calendar to support that process. Then as you head into next year, it might be helpful to think about what that can look like each quarter of the school year and what you'd be spending your time on. In the model we've discussed today, we identified monthly assessments as a structured process to collect and gather data. And that can certainly be adjusted. But those would be given between September and May roughly, allowing teachers to have consistent data each month to adjust their instruction. Simultaneously, as that data is collected, teachers would be meeting in their professional learning communities, both to prep and prepare logistically for delivery of assessment, as well as to analyze data once it's been collected, and use that to lead student conferences each time in their classrooms to ensure that students are just as bought into this process and know their progress to goal. In addition, we recommend having your district leadership team meet on a slightly less frequent basis in order to look at a high level at the data trends that you're seeing across schools so that you can deploy extra resources and supports as needed in response to the growth of students, as well as having mid-year and end-of-year step-backs and analyses and discussions around the success of your assessment process so that you can make any adjustments for semester 2 or for the year that follows. So we really appreciate you participating today and have collected a lot of questions from you throughout. Please continue to enter those questions in the chat window, and we're going to tackle answering as many of them as we can in our remaining time that we have available. But I'd love to kick it off with a few that have already come in. And Dr. Lee, I'm wondering if perhaps this question would be best for you. We heard from a number of folks questions about differentiation and supporting students at all levels. So anytime we collect student data, we need to take action in reteaching and corrective instruction in order to ensure that students are getting what they need, but that can sometimes negatively impact curriculum pacing. What guidance would you give around how to balance that reteaching need along with staying on top of curriculum demands and the pacing of the school year?
Yes, thank you, and that's an excellent question, and it's also a question that we're consistently trying to provide support for with our teachers, because the natural tendency is to focus on pacing than student mastery. So what we've done in our trainings and our site-based support is support teachers in how do you scaffold learning when you're reteaching and connecting it to the new learning. So for instance, if students are displaying a deficit area, for example, let's say they're constructing a paragraph and the deficit is sentence structure, how do you design your small groups so that you're reteaching the skill of sentence structure, but in the context of something broader and more meaningful? This does require effective planning. So another one of our pushes has been collaborative planning with the student and standards in mind. And so we use the acronym START. And START stands for students, planning for the right time, planning with the assessments that you're going to use based on the deficit, determining upfront the resource that you're going to use, the techniques that will be needed to intervene, and then, of course, the standards that connect to the deficit standard as well as the upcoming standard. So we've done a lot in the past, I would say ineffectively, of just stopping and remediating. That has not proven to be effective for us. We need to accelerate, and accelerate means you attack the deficit while introducing the new together. So that's been our approach to that, and it's still a challenge. It's not perfect, but we're having light bulb moments.
I love it. Attack the deficit and approach the new. That's wonderful. We have another question from William. He asked, with these outside graders from the Graide network, how are teachers who are in the classroom staying connected to the growth of their students in the details of knowing exactly where growth needs to happen? And I'd love to respond to this question directly. Is one thing that we always think about is that this is supplemental support. So teachers are ultimately still responsible for grading and providing feedback on the many other assessments and assignments happening throughout the year. But being able to dig into objective, third-party data and feedback unlocks opportunities for more structured data cycles, as we've discussed. So we like to compare the relationship between teachers and graders to that of doctors and nurses. Nurses will take a patient's vitals and collect all the important data for their charts, but a doctor is going to be the one responsible for using that data to diagnose and determine the plan of care and treatment. The same can be said for teachers. Teachers have shared that they use our reports for targeted extensions and interventions, to more effectively conference with students, and to increase the frequency of writing in their classroom. And in addition to the teacher's ability to adjust instruction, many of our district partners use Graide Network data to guide professional learning, data analysis cycles, and coach their teachers on their own feedback and scoring practices. They can learn exactly what great feedback looks like, and they learn how to read and use data reports to guide their decision-making in those reteach scenarios. We noticed before that one of the top items on our poll was about garnering teacher buy-in, and Deborah asked an additional question about this. She says, how do we build an understanding that formative assessment is for informing instruction and not just a collection of grades? Christy, I'm wondering if, as you're on the ground working with schools, you see this tension sometime for teachers and school leaders. How do they go about building that understanding of using formative assessment to inform instruction and not just focusing on the grade component of it?
Right. I think what happens is that we have to have those conversations that what we're doing is helping that student in the classroom. And one of the things that I thought was so great when we were, as we've used the Graide Network, was that we're not looking at this necessarily, yes, it gives a grade, and yes, it tells the student where they are, but it was more important that the students were having conversations about what was happening and the feedback they were getting. And it was also telling the teacher of the direction where they may have missed information in the classroom or they didn't understand something. It clearly showed, oh, hey, all of our students did really well in this area, but in this area, wow, we need to go back and really talk about that. So it really was being used as a way for the class to see that this was a method to work together to improve their practice. And that leads to students taking ownership. And that's when it gets exciting in the classroom. So for us, it was understanding that this was to help our students to improve, and for them to think critically, they've got to be able to look at that feedback and be able to know what they can do to grow from it.
Thanks, Christy. Well, we are at our time for today, so I'd love to recap and offer a couple of final thoughts and direct you to some great resources for your next steps. So 3 things really stood out to me today in our discussion. First is the alignment of vision across all stakeholders, along with an effective communication plan, is critical to ensure buy-in for everybody. Second is just how clearly it is important to equip teachers with the supports and resources to back up those strategic initiatives. And then thirdly, the need to plan ahead to ensure there's an iterative process in designing your assessment protocols, as your first draft is not necessarily going to be the one that lends to the most successful outcomes. I'd also like to offer a huge thank you to our presenters today, Dr. Lee, Christy, Greg, and for all of you who joined us. Thank you for the hard work and dedication you exhibit in schools every day and for taking the time to learn with us. We hope you enjoyed it and encourage you to download the resources that are available to you. Certainly, if you'd like to learn more about working with the Graide Network, you can reach us on our website or schedule a call anytime. We'd love to speak with you and serve as a resource for you as you push student learning further in your districts and continue to design formative assessments to help that process. Have a great rest of your week, and thanks for joining us.